Good morning and welcome to Coffee and the Word. We're continuing our series on Hark the Herald Angels Sing, a song written by Charles Wesley, and verse 2 says this: By Christ by highest heaven adored, Christ the everlasting Lord, late in time behold he come, offspring of the Virgin's womb. Veiled in flesh, the Godhead see. Hail the incarnate deity. Pleased as man with men to dwell, Jesus, our Emmanuel. And so I told you yesterday that Hark the Herald Angels is one of the most theologically dense Christmas carols we sing. Wesley does a really good job of telling the gospel story throughout the song. And verse 2 tells the part of the story that I think sometimes we don't take the time to really consider the ramifications of its truth. Here's the part that I find so amazing. Veiled in flesh, the Godhead see. Hail the incarnate deity. And John 1, this is literally John 1. In John 1, it says, In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. And then in verse 14, the Word that we just talked about, the Word who made the world and everything in it, the Word in which light came, or life came with him, which is the light of men, became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. And so when I read that John 1, I'm always reminded or amazed at the reminding that the remembrance that this brings to mind, that we serve a God whose Son took on flesh, became a man, and not just any man. You know, one of the things that is so awesome about the incarnation story of Christ Jesus is that he didn't come in as a king. He didn't come in as a world leader. He didn't come in the child of royalty. He was literally born to a poor family. He was literally born in impoverished circumstances. He was born a laborer. He was born to the family of a craftsman, of a carpenter. He was born during a time in which he had to be born in the most humble of circumstances, surrounded by animals. He was, by all accounts and purposes, intentionally taking on flesh in such a way so that he could identify with the most oppressed. And I think it's important for us to understand that God fully understands our experience. When we're in the midst of an oppressive situation, God gets it. Jesus was born in the midst of his people being occupied by a Roman government, oppressed by high taxes, oppressed by a government who didn't feel that their rights had any real equality with their own rights. And so he was born in a time when people were really struggling to not feel oppressed and forgotten. And he was born of a family who would have never been considered elite, if you will. And so I want you to take a moment and consider the ramifications of these words. Veiled in flesh, the Godhead see. Hail the incarnate deity. The word incarnate literally means to take on flesh. Like that's what it literally means to put on a meat skin, right? I mean, carnate is meat. It's this Godhead taking on the form of a servant, taking on the form of a man, which is what the Philippian writer Paul says that Jesus Christ, who, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking on the very nature of a servant and being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. And so, when you consider the gospel narrative, I think it's really easy for us as a people to try and equivocate, right? Every religion is the same. Every religion, all roads lead to the same destination. There's this real movement that we don't need to be elitists when it comes to our faith system. And I'm just going to tell you, I don't think it's elitist to identify the uniqueness of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And it is unique. You see, in the gospel narrative, God didn't come take something from us. God came to give everything of himself to us through his son, Jesus Christ. You know, the very nature of God taking on the form of a man to rescue the very men whose wickedness was abounding is a story that even if you wanted to be hostile to it, you would have to recognize the beauty of deity becoming flesh, not so that he can rule them better, although he is our king, not so that he could oppress us more or strike judgment down upon us, but pleased as man with men to dwell. Like he literally came and dwelt among us. And I think that story tells us so much. In fact, a little bit later, the Hebrew writer says that we do not serve a high priest who doesn't understand what we're going through. I don't know about you, but sometimes I get really annoyed that people make decisions for me who don't really understand what I'm going through. They don't understand our plight. They come from a very different circumstance, and they make rules and regulations and laws that they don't really understand the full effects of it. And I'm like, why don't you get it? Well, they don't get it because they haven't lived it. And here's the cool thing about us and our faith journey. Christ gets it. He walked the walk that you and I walk. He was oppressed. He was harassed. He was rejected. He was despised. He was denied. He was betrayed. He had a full experience, a full human experience, if you will, just so that he could relate to us and rescue us. And so, pleased as man with men to dwell, Jesus, our Emmanuel, God with us. So, as you sing this song, I want you to remember the fact that he chose to take on the form of a servant. He chose to take on flesh. He chose to walk among us and talk among us. The King of Kings left his throne to become our peer so that he could be our sacrifice. You know, and I'll end with this, but one of the greatest things about the gospel narrative is that the good news was ushered in by somebody who should have had no influence in his time. There was nothing about him that would draw men to him. A man of sorrows. And yet, he changed the world. Not from a place of nobility, but from a place of servitude. Maybe we can learn from that. Maybe we can emulate that. Hark, the herald angels sing. Glory to the newborn King. God bless you. This has been another edition of Coffee and the Word.